Hey everybody, it's Alex. Welcome back to my garden. Today is tomato day. Stick around because after I show you the mechanics of how to get this guy in the ground, I will reveal to you my most secret ingredient for tomato success and how you can use it to control early blight in your garden. Now today I'm going to show you how I plant tomatoes. There are many different ways to plant tomatoes and all of them might work for you, some of them might not. With gardening, it's really just figuring out what does work for you, just trying and experimenting to see what gives you success and not so much success so that you can have another shot at it next season. So today I'm planting tomato seedlings that I started from seed indoors probably a couple of months ago. I have grow lights and I was able to keep these indoors and then harden them off. And so I'm going to be planting these seedlings in the ground. The first thing to think about when you're planting tomatoes is your soil. You want to have well-draining soil that is also full of organic matter and is nutrient rich. This bed behind me is made up of the base layer of the Alabama red clay soil with quite a few rocks in it. And on top of that, I've put several inches of well-aged composted chicken manure mixed with just your basic topsoil that you can buy in a bag at the store. And then I added a bone meal fertilizer to the top of that and raked it in, just following the instructions on the back of the bag. And this should have everything that my tomato plants need throughout the season. The composted chicken manure is going to be very high in nitrogen, which all plants, especially tomatoes, need. And the bone meal fertilizer is going to just kind of be like a multivitamin and have, just a well-rounded balance of all the different nutrients, especially calcium. Tomatoes can suffer from blossom end rot, which is when you get a beautiful tomato that is ripe and you harvest it and then you look at the bottom and it's just brown and mushy and rotten on the bottom, and that's called blossom end rot. And that can be caused by many things, including too dry or too wet conditions, but it's also caused from not enough calcium in the soil. So I really wanted to make sure that I had all my bases covered and that the tomatoes were going to have plenty of calcium. Once your soil's ready, it's time to plant. And with tomatoes, the deeper you can plant them, the better. The reason for planting tomatoes deeply is that if you look at a tomato plant, they look hairy. They look like they've got little hairs all along the stem, even up to the very top. And these aren't actually hairs. If you bury the stem, all of these little hairs will turn into roots. And so the deeper that you bury your plant, the more roots you're going to have, and the more roots, the more healthy the plant is going to be. So you could just bury the tomato up to this point, but it wouldn't be as sturdy and it wouldn't have as many roots, so it wouldn't have as much access to water. So when you plant tomatoes, you want to remove the bottom leaves. You want to leave, let's see, I'm probably going to remove everything below here, and I'm going to bury my tomato plant up to this point. So what you want to do is remove these bottom leaves and be gentle, but you're not going to, if you're gentle, you're not going to damage the plant. You just want to press down on it and then lift it back up, and it's just going to come right off. So we're going to remove the bottom leaves, and if there are any little suckers trying to form, you're going to remove those too. So this is what I'm going to leave at the top of my plant, and I'm going to dig a hole deep enough so that I can bury the plant right about up to here, and that will make a really happy tomato plant. to get the tomato plant out of the pot, you just want to gently squeeze the end and the sides, sort of loosen up any compacted soil so it will slide out easier. Grab it by the stem close to the soil, tip it over, and it should come right out. Now, sometimes a seedling will get root bound, which will mean that it'll look really dense. All the roots will look knotted up and really dense around the bottom. This one's not too bad, but it'll be helpful to the plant if you can kind of loosen up the bottom of the roots. And you want to be really gentle with the roots, but you can just gently sort of massage away some of the soil and just tease out some loose roots, just so it's not a big knot, and that really helps the tomato plant. And then just put it in your hole and backfill. You can see how much red clay soil I've got once you get down past the compost and the topsoil. It's really nice red clay under there, which isn't the best for drainage, but it's not awful. It does retain moisture more than just a regular topsoil. And it is actually pretty fertile. That red clay is quite fertile. And then you just want to give your plant a drink. Just give him a little drink depending on how moist your soil is. It just rained last night, so he doesn't need too much, just enough to sort of moisten up that soil and those roots that he was in. All right, guys, as you can see, this bed is now full of beautiful tomato plants. Now this bed is 4 feet by 8 feet, so that is 32 square feet, and I've got 14 tomato plants in here. Now that is a little over 2 square feet per plant, which should be plenty. And now that they're all in the ground, buried deep so that they can grow healthy little root systems, I'm gonna show you the most important part. So if you grow tomatoes, you know that blight is something that can wipe out your entire crop. There's early blight and late blight, and there are many different fungal diseases that can negatively impact your tomato plants. So blight is a soil-borne disease, meaning blight is everywhere. It lives in the soil. And if you're growing tomatoes in hot and humid conditions, which is what tomatoes like, then chances are you're going to get blight at some point during the growing season. But it's really disappointing when you get early blight in, say, June or July, and then you don't have anything to harvest. And so there are some things that you can do to protect your plants. Some things you can do to prevent blight are mulching your plants and watering them at the base of the plant instead of watering from the top of the plant down, because tomato leaves, when they're wet, is when blight is going to spread up and down the plant and to other plants. But I'm trying something new this year, which I've heard good things about. I've read a lot about this online, and it is cornmeal, coarse ground cornmeal. The first time I heard about this was listening to the Beginner's Garden podcast with Jill. I can't remember her last name, but if you search for the Beginner's Garden podcast, you'll find her podcast. And she's got tons of useful information on there. And one of her guests told her about using coarse ground cornmeal, and you spread it over the soil around your tomato plants. And there's actually a compound in the cornmeal that fights blight that lives in the soil. So I'm gonna go ahead and spread this cornmeal over in a thin layer over the surface of this entire bed. And it's okay if it gets on the leaves. It's not going to hurt your tomato plant. So I'm just spreading it, kind of sprinkling it all over the entire bed, but I'm concentrating it around the base of each tomato plant. Alright, now that that's finished, the next step is to cover this cornmeal with a couple of inches of mulch. I'm going to be using just a really rough wood chip mulch that also has pieces of pine cones and small twigs and things in it, and just several inches, no, maybe like an inch. I might do an inch now and then add more once the plants are taller, and you can add more after the plants are taller and you've pruned off the bottom leaves, because you also don't want leaves to touch the ground or the mulch, because that is how diseases are going to travel up onto those leaves. That's all for today, guys. I'm gonna keep spreading this mulch and then go inside where it is cool. I don't know if you can tell, but it is roasting out here. I'm literally melting. And just a quick reminder, if you also have a toddler and you can't be out gardening in the morning or the evening and you have to garden in the heat of the day, just make sure that you are wearing sunscreen and stay hydrated. But yeah, I hope that you learned something today. I hope that you plant some tomatoes. I don't know why, but tomatoes are my favorite thing to grow. I love growing a garden because I love growing as many different things as I possibly can, but I do have to say that I do have a favorite, and it is tomatoes. And it has a lot to do with the way they smell. The plants, the smell of tomato plants is a glorious thing. And that first tomato sandwich that you get, that you harvested from a plant that you grew, is delicious. And so yeah, I hope that you can experience that this summer. I hope that you now feel confident enough to plant some tomatoes in your garden, and let me know how that goes. Let me know if any of these tips helped, and also comment if you have any questions. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, as well as weekly garden tours and other kinds of tutorial and gardening related content. I know if you're like me, I can't get enough gardening content, so I just had to start making it. If you haven't watched my previous videos, I've got a before video for what this section of yard looked like just a couple of months ago. It was just a bare lawn, and now it's growing food, and it's just going to go through such a huge transformation this season, and I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. Thanks again for watching. Happy growing.